And now, everyone, please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to your host, Dave Dean.
Thank you. Hi, everybody here in the room and also online. Today, our session is called Non-Touring Show Production Jobs. And we have some really great panelists to talk with you today. All the way to the left, we have Charity Lomax, Hall of Famer from 2015. And she works with Jerry Harvey, the in-ear monitor manufacturer right now, currently. In-ears, sorry. And to her right, Mr. Leon Hopkins, who is head of Clair Global's crew and touring staff. And to my right is Mr. Brice Helman, future Hall of Famer. And oh, by the way, Leon made Hall of Fame in 2012?
13, I think.
2013. Brice is future Hall of Famer, and he heads up a company, Forward Thinking Designs. And so let's give them all a hand and welcome to our panel. So increasingly now, with a show production degree, we have quite a few students not necessarily going into the concert touring industry. So I'll just open it up for the panel to discuss any non-touring type jobs they can expect to look for those people who maybe aren't suited for traveling and...
Well, cruise ships, I mean, it's still travel, but it's just a different part of the industry that I don't think a lot of people might necessarily know about. There's obviously entertainment on cruises, and increasingly you will see themed cruises where, like I said, it's like the 80s cruise, and there's like a sea of bands coming in and out, different crews, different artists and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff like that. Corporate jobs where, you know, everybody's got to be able to hear, there's got to be video, there's things like that.
What's working with the manufacturer? How is that different than what you used to do? The tour.
So the company, I work for JH Audio, and we sell in-ear monitors that most of the artists wear on stage. And I mean, it's different, but I kind of came full circle because I'm kind of getting back to my audio roots because that's what I came here for. But it's cool because I still kind of get up to be a part of show production because you got to be able to hear yourself. And then having that background and also understanding how touring works, understanding the necessity of getting things to people in a timely fashion, and also helping steer them to the right model for whatever it is. Like if you're a guitar player, one thing might be better, one in-ear might be better for you than, say, another one. So it's different, but all the stuff that I've learned and through my different career choices have helped me to do what I do now.
Cool. Leon, you work for Clair, and obviously they're known for touring, but what are some of the non-touring staff? What could they expect to do at Clair Brothers?
You know, a company that has grown into the capacity that Clair's at needs a lot of support people that don't travel. Everything from, you know, typical business, anything administrative to the shop environment, technical people that can put together equipment, help sort out, you know, turning gear around in the shop. We have an R&D department, people that design audio equipment. So the need for non-touring people has actually grown in our company, and a lot of those positions might get filled from people who come from the road. And the good side of that is they have a familiarity of the things that go on the road. So the transition to them is just being off the road. I mean, I'm an example of that. I was on the road for Clair back at Showco, actually, but for about 11 years, and then went into a training capacity. That's another department. So, I mean, a lot of companies have needs for people that are in a support capacity, and you help put shows together, but you're not at the show. You're just help getting it out the door, and you're doing the maintenance along the way. You know, when people are on the road and they have problems, they have to call in and get help, and or they need equipment. I mean, we have people in shipping departments. The other thing is, I won't go to it, but the Rock Lidditz is a big project for us. If you haven't checked that out, it's it's a big campus of, going to be a compilation of industry people. That'll open up jobs for non-touring. Just you can go to rocklitits.com, I think, and look at a webpage, something like that.
Now, Brice, your company works with a lot of theme park and integration type stuff. Can you elaborate on some of the non-touring aspects?
Right. Well, it's kind of funny, as you said earlier. Like, I actually travel more than people on tour most of the time. Like, I travel, some years I travel as much as 300 days out of the year. Sometimes I travel 365 days out of the year. One year I traveled 425 days out of the year. That is possible. Yeah, that was a wild year. The time zone thing, that's time travel.
Get it back and take it away.
Yeah, right. So even though it's not touring, I go to other countries and just stay there for a long time as I'm doing show production related jobs. So, but that's only sometimes. It's actually cyclical. So sometimes I'm actually doing design work in the office, or I'm doing R&D on new products, which, as you were saying, working for a manufacturer is actually really fun. Mm-hmm. Like when you get to tinker with toys all day and get to make new stuff. And even for us, we're not really a manufacturer of our own hardware yet. We're starting to explore those alleyways. We actually are really good friends with some of the other manufacturers in the industry, and we get to help develop their products, and that's definitely an outlet, to partner up with manufacturers. So a lot of my work actually starts in the office. We do a lot of design work, taking AutoCAD blueprints, architectural drawings, planning a design, planning an entire installation. We do it on paper first. And then, we might have some on-site meetings. So there might be a few trips, to foreign countries. We present it, and then it moves on to the actual integration aspect of the project. And then that's when you start traveling. That's when you fly over, and some people kind of travel in and out of the project quite frequently. And then there's people like me that I get one flight a year to some foreign country, and then who knows when I'll be back. So.
So what's the demand for, say, people who actually install the gear? That would be considered probably a non.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, if we talk about all of the pieces of the puzzle, there's the lead design consultant, right? So they're the head of the project. What they're going to do is work with the client about what the client needs, what the project wants, what products we're going to use, and what the overall plan is of the park, or whatever the installation is. Then you have your engineers. They're the actual AutoCAD draftsmen. They're going to figure out how to draw it, how it's all going to work. We do all the planning and data management over the entire project. You have salespeople that are going to figure out how to bundle everything up, and doing all the administration tasks, as well as the project managers. They get involved too once it goes to integration, and this is all offline stuff. This is not even on site yet. Then when it comes time to actually mobilize the project and start installing, then it goes to procurement. That's a whole department that just does nothing but shop all day, really, for everything on the materials list.
Fancy word for shopping.
Yeah, procurement. That's a very yeah, exactly. So if you like spending other people's money, that is there is a job for that, pretty much with every company, actually. And then you have your on-site project manager. Then you have your installation techs, and that's a huge thing. There is a huge demand for that. Like if you like using your hands and getting dirty, and building racks, and actually installing speakers out in the field and running cable and terminating things and all that, you don't have to go on the road to lay cable. You can do it. You can do it once and be done. You don't have to keep packing it up every night. You can do it once and be done. So there's the install techs, and then there's the on-site engineers that will make sure that what's on paper from the office is actually getting built properly. Then you have your commissioning techs that actually power everything up, get it operational, go through the entire system and check it. And from there, sometimes part of the process is an extra audio team that comes in, either just to do tuning or to do the mix down process, which is where you come in and you remix the content in the venue for the particular attraction that you're doing. So there's totally a large number of jobs available through the entire installation process, whether you're in the office or whether you want to go on site. And sometimes there's plenty of installations that happen in the U.S. or wherever you're based. You don't actually have to travel to a foreign country, just to do an installation. So sometimes it's local. We travel 20 minutes across Orlando to do an install. We have a few Disney projects, a few local projects here in Orlando, and those are nice. I don't have to get on a plane for anything, but those are uncommon for us because we target the international market.
So you mentioned project management. I'm sure there's a few music business and entertainment business students here. Charity, you used to do production coordinating on the road, and I know there's plenty of work off the road for that sort of thing. Can you explain like what that person would do and what their responsibility?
There's event planning, which is huge, and you even see it for when I was working with these touring bands. You've got the rich guy that wants to have a birthday party and is going to have the Eagles come, and you name it, big stars, small stars, whatever. But someone's got to actually put the whole event together. So usually when we would come in there, there's a guy that had that knowledge, the audio knowledge, you knew how sort of all the different components work, that's putting on this huge event. And all of those things, and a lot of times it was someone that used to be a road guy and decided he didn't want to travel anymore, and that's what they do. They throw these lavish parties and bring all these different vendors in and make sure everybody gets what they need and it gets to go home at night. So there's a lot of different ways that the skill sets come into play when you don't even know that it's a thing until you kind of get exposed to it and you realize, yeah, I could do that. Like, that's totally in my wheelhouse. So yeah, there's a bunch of different ways, and a lot of times, like even for me, I would see things and I was like, I didn't even realize there was a guy that was something that you did until I got exposed to it, and it was like something that I totally could have done or what have you.
I have a question. Raise your hand if you're positive you don't want to travel.
That's not many of you. How many of you want to travel and look forward to, wow. How many of you are show pro? Just curious. Okay. Well, that explains it. I'm sure.
Well, I think, let me just say this though. I think it's important to know, because I love that you all have an idea of what you want to do, and that's great. But what I think you should know is that if you get there and you decide that that's not the right fit for you once you get in it, it's still, you learn it all, and that's great. But the reality of actually doing the job and the different nuances and things that we can't sit and tell you everything, what you need to know is that there's alternatives. You can take all of this stuff that you've learned and apply it somewhere else that's a better fit for you. And I think that's why I thought this panel was so important, because I've seen students come out of school and as soon as they hit that first bump or they really don't like it, and I've seen people give up and go home. And now they're, paying all this money every month for their student loan, and they're just, doing something totally unrelated, when if they had just, taken the time or reached out and told someone they needed help, that there's all these other things that you can do that you never even dreamed of. So that's why I thought this was important, so that you know that if you do get out there and change your mind, there are all alternatives.
Yeah, you kind of don't know until you know.
Yeah.
When you get out there traveling, it's a pretty hard life and little sleep, and some people melt down after a while, and then it's good
and
to
if
know
you want to have a
you don't
family,
have to do that.
That's the other component too. Do you want to, if you're a female, do you want to have children? Even it doesn't even matter if you're female. If you want to be a father and you want to be present in your child's life, like you guys are young right now, but maybe 10 years down the road, you're like, you know what? I want to be home for my kids. So what do I do now? So it's just knowing that there are other opportunities out there, and then in a lot of places that you never would expect it.
Yeah, Leon, you deal a lot with, I guess, road staff and that sort of thing. So you run into that, guys who don't realize they're not cut out for the touring thing.
Yeah, on occasion we do get people that, everyone's got a different threshold of travel, and what I find is that through life, your priorities might change. So what looks good here today and next year and the year after might change in a few years. And you can't maybe predict that. We have road employees that have been out there their whole career, up there 30-plus years. Then we've got some folks that have been out there for 8 or 10 years, and then they, decided that that was their point of, not traveling anymore. And we were lucky enough for a lot of them to find them positions within the company, but they had a transferable skill. They had something to bring with them off the road, which can be important.
So, Brice, you mentioned traveling quite a bit, some of the projects you're doing over in China and such. How many people travel with you, say, on one of those projects?
Well, for
Do you bring labor
Yeah.
with you, in other words? Because I
Right.
know a lot of times in South America, I've seen like Chinese construction companies down there, they
Yeah.
bring their labor. So
Yeah.
is that a thing that?
It's kind of uncommon for us where we would bring all of the labor with us. Typically, what we do is, we have what we call skilled labor, where it's our engineers and then it's our lead technicians. So from the integration company will probably bring over one or two of their technicians, and they're going to hire a whole bunch of local labor, and it is the technician's job now to sort of be a manager. They're going to demonstrate how they want the racks to be built. So they'll build the first one and say, look, here's the way we run the wires on the inside, this is the way we construct the racks, and then after demonstrating the first one, then they kind of manage the local labor to go out and build everything else. So it's kind of they're the liaison between the project manager who's running the overall project, or the site manager, and the local labor. That's if you're doing really a foreign project that's that's going to be long term. It's hard to mobilize everyone. A lot of the reason for that is just budget. There's some drawbacks with doing it that way. There are some companies out there that mobilize their entire crew.
Wow.
There's a particular integrator that I've worked with before, not worked for, but worked with, where they mobilize the entire install tech. And I mean, the benefit to that was they cranked out the entire project in like 2 weeks and they were done. Just because they're the same family and they just know how to go out and bang through an install and then you're done. So there are pros and cons to that. Now, for our company, our company size is very, very small. So for this particular project, all the resources have been in one place at one time. Now we kind of scaled back some resources on this particular project, and now we're kind of diversifying ourselves through a few different projects that we have going on right now. But pretty much no one's in the office. We're all out doing other jobs right now. So
Cool. So, Charity, how important is local crew in the
I mean-
whole game? A lot of these cats are not traveling per se. but-
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is we talked in the other panel, like, jobs starting out, or not even jobs starting out, because there's guys, when you're on the road, you get a local crew, you travel with your crew, and then you have, 30, 40, 50, however many, depending on the size of the show, local stagehands. And usually, a lot of times, they specialize, like, this particular guy knows audio and this guy is good with video, and so, or this guy's a rigger. So yeah, a lot of people start that way. A lot of people then go back to do that when they're done touring, and a lot of people do it when they're not working. But it's something, if you work at Amway, you see all the shows come in, you're there for load in, you're there for load out, and it's really, really important. And there's nothing worse than a bad stagehand when because you're trying to hurry up and get things done. So it's like you're coming in there and you already know how to fly a PA because you've done it before. Like, you're going to be the guy that everybody wants to work with, or girl in a lot of cases. But yeah, local crew, that is actually a good way to work in the industry, and like I said, stay at home or not, or just do it to fill in time in between gigs, because that's another thing. Like, you'll go out on the road and then tour ends and they might not have anything for you, or you might not have anything for a couple of months. So unless you can afford to sit at home for that long, you want to fill that time, and that's a great way to do it and still be working in your field.
And Leon, I noticed last year we were doing some stuff with Carnival, and it was your gear and your guys out there on the cruise ship actually doing the whole shebang. Is that's another alternative?
Well, I mean, you were kind of mentioning there's projects that are short, like we do events. It's not our core business, but we do events. Might do an award show, might do some broadcast, something. You know, we're in several areas, but there's companies that really do just focus on corporate work and doing events. So you do travel, but you're going to go somewhere for a couple weeks at the most and be back home for a week. So, you know, there's minimal travel compared to people that get onto tours. So there are companies you can look at. You know, we wouldn't be able to hire somebody and you know, and make it so that that's the only capacity they work in. We have people that do those gigs in between big gigs, in between the long projects. So, but there are short duration projects that go out and back. You know, you can look at the cruise thing. You can look at you know, events, companies that do mainly one-offs and festivals.
The Grammys.
The Grammys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one. Doing there's like entire production companies that's all they do, and like when you do award shows, it's the same people
Yeah.
and they do the Grammys and the Oscars, all those same people. And there's production companies
Fire.
that's all they do
ATK.
is events.
ATK, yeah.
ATK, yeah. I
They're
think
good
they
at
were
it, too.
doing.
You know, there's companies that's what they focus on.
Yeah,
ATK.
it's ATK, I think.
On the West Coast, yeah, they do massive amount of award shows.
And then the corporate companies, I know the big show every year, 4th of July in DC is PRG, but it's the same, like Charity says, it's the same technicians that travel out to do that
Yeah,
year in
yeah.
and year out.
There's a niche that you can create in that whole market, working with the same. Yeah, I mean, we have people that get called back every year to do one-offs that, you know, they because their clients they know that they're familiar with everything going on, and you know, there's a niche there that you can get into, probably.
Yeah, corporate events in and of themselves are huge. And around here, when we say corporate events, the first thing that comes to mind is really, you know, hotel ballrooms and, you know, really small stuff. But let me tell you, there are some corporate events out there that are massive. They are trade show size unto themselves.
Oh, the NAM convention.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just doing NAM in and of itself, but then, you know, there are certain enterprise grade companies that take up, you know, the entire Sands Convention Center, all
Oh, yeah.
4 floors. I mean, there's one in particular that I was lucky enough to visit a couple years ago, and that show had over 750 RF mics on it. Yeah. And it's absolutely incredible, the size of it. I mean, the planning of that show is now going beyond 12 months in advance. You know, they're starting to plan a show 15 months in advance. That means you have overlapping shows that you're
Yeah.
planning for now, and they do 1 or 2 events, you know, at a time. You know, and the whole production company that they do, they have several large companies, and so it's like those corporate gigs are out there where, you know, you will do nothing but sit in an office and plan the corporate gig, and you might not even be the one out there actually running any of the cable. Like, you were just part of the design team for it, you know, because that's 15 months of your life, you know, just planning this one event that lasts a week, and there you have it.
So that's an incredible amount of support staff as well.
Yeah.
I know when you go out to Vegas and do that stuff. I guess it bears mentioning that IATSE should come into our conversation at some point, because I know when I was younger, when I was in town, I got a lot of work just through the local. And, you know, it's kind of like a local crew kind of thing. Since I know you had some experience with House of Worship. I remember back in the day you were working on a big design. Can you elaborate on that? Because that's a whole other kind of stay-home market.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's every bit as challenging as any other type of production.
It is, and maybe not necessarily in the technical way, but from a design consulting standpoint, that's a really difficult market to try to wrangle. Mainly because there's a lot of budgetary considerations. There's a lot of design factors that go into consideration when you're working with House of Worship. You know, a lot of times they want to maintain the structure of the building, so, you know, we don't want to want to put a line array in here. We want to, maintain the cathedral look, or, whatever the architectural situation is. A lot of times, you have power issues, the infrastructure is old and things like that. So there's a lot of design challenges. And the interesting bit when it comes to working with a house of worship is a lot of times they're unfamiliar with what the entire design process is. They don't know what steps to take. They don't know how to go through the process because they don't really deal with entertainment. Like, entertainment's kind of a new thing that is going into the house of worship market. And so they're like, okay, what do we do next? I'm coming to you because I'm saying I need help, and they don't even know how to use the right words to describe the problems that they're having. They're just saying, the music's not good. They just kind of say that. It's like, well, the music's not good, and people complain that it's too loud. I get that a lot. No, you don't have a loudness problem. You have a coverage problem. I go to a lot of churches and they don't have enough speakers, or they have something super old, that was just there for vocal reinforcement, from 30 years ago, and half the drivers are blown or whatever. And it's like, well, you don't have a loudness problem. You have a coverage problem, and you're trying to compensate by turning it louder, and then you're just relying on bounce sound off the walls. And it's like, how about we get good coverage and you can bring the overall volume down? And then now you're sitting in proper coverage of your speakers, and now it's intelligible, and you can actually understand what is being said. And then, if it's good modern speakers, now it's going to sound full range. You're going to have full range again because half your drivers are blown, like I said. And so now you have good music, and now everyone is happy, and it's a win-win situation. And it doesn't have to cost a whole lot of money. You just have to understand their needs. So my point is, a lot of times they don't know how to properly ask for what it is that they need, and they don't know what they need. That's why they're coming asking for help. A lot of situations they don't even know how to ask for help. So there's truly a good market there. If you don't have to be a salesy guy, like, you don't have to really try and go hard and sell to them. You just need to be available and just understand their needs, and be willing to work with them and guide them through the process. And that's true for a lot of clients. Even doing business in China, it was a very similar situation. They didn't know what they needed. They didn't know how to ask for help. They didn't understand the process. And so once we figured that out, like, we thought that they just knew how to do business because they've built some theme parks before. And then we found out, it's like, oh, you don't understand, like, how to tell when you're getting a good deal or how to tell when you're getting a bad design. So then we realized, well, we need to help guide our client through the right direction. And we find that that's the case more often than not. Even when a client knows what they're doing, it's like, we don't have to go through this whole song and dance every time. We can just cut right to the chase, and, we can agree to help each other here. Like, that's not a big deal. So, even from a small standpoint to, a larger company, when you're dealing with it, there's aspects that, transcend all those boundaries.
Well,
Yeah.
Go ahead. In those houses of worship, though, when you're putting all these systems in, is there usually, at this point, if they're investing that kind of money, is there someone there that's actually maintaining it?
That's a great question.
Yeah, is there a house guy?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So the answer is it depends. It depends on the size of the church. And so I have a really deep passion for helping medium-sized churches grow into large-sized churches. Out there, there are already integrators that specialize in taking a large church and make it go mega status, right? So typically we consider a church a mega church once it goes multi-site. So when you go multi-site, now you need video primarily because now you have to simulcast out to all your campuses, right? So once a large church understands that they want to go multi-site, they already know that there's a huge cost investment that has to be made for all of the equipment and all the gear that has to get installed. They know that, okay, this is a serious install now. But the real struggling people is, the small and medium-sized churches that want to continue to expand, and they can't get there because, they're like, well, we don't have the money, and we're not an arts church. We don't want the lights and the smoke and, the video and all of that. We don't want to go multi-site. We don't need video at all. And those churches are where they're really stuck. And that's where they really need someone who understands the way that they operate and understands their needs to come in and really help them. and evaluate what their needs are. And like I started with, that's where the budgetary restrictions come in, because a lot of times in this particular area, they don't have an idea of how much good sound reinforcement costs. And that's unfortunate. It's just part of our business where the technology still is expensive. It has a cost to it. So there's some sticker shock that you have to try and wrangle. But then once you can kind of warm them up to the idea of like, this is important because if you trust me to help you with this particular problem, then I'm sure that your church congregation size will grow, which is how churches make money. That's more income to them. So it's an investment up front, but then through the growing of the congregation size, because now that they can actually hear what's being preached, that's the primary goal here, then now they're making more income. So it's a leap of faith on all fronts, basically, when you're dealing with houses of worship.
It's one of those things that even me, I didn't even know, like, I just figured if you were in a band at church, that was just something that you did. Like, that was like you were being a part of your church. But what I didn't realize is, and especially in these mega churches, these people are getting paid a lot of money and the bands, like, I know a lot of
bands are paid.
I know a lot of touring guys that's what they do when they're not on the road, is they're playing in their church and they're getting paid. And I'm talking like these amazing bands. So it's like, when you talk about sound reinforcement, we're not just talking just so you can hear what's being preached. A lot of times there's these amazing bands and choirs and all of that kind of stuff. So,
is anyone familiar with Sanctus Real? Anyone know that name? I figured you would. Sanctus Real is a popular Christian band. A lot of the band members actually perform, or they are the worship team of Cedar Creek Church in Ohio. Like, it's like, oh, that's cool. Like, my favorite band is like, every Sunday is there. That's sweet. So, and there's a lot of situations like that. And now it's kind of going the other way too, where a lot of the musicians that make up a worship team of a particular church actually go and record an album, and then so now they're getting, more popular based on the albums that they release.
I play bass guitar at a church.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to cut a record? I mean, do this. I played keys for a long time.
We read the Bible. We play some music.
Yeah.
Great.
yeah, I know a lot of people that do.
What I've seen happen, what is interesting to me over the years, is once somebody like Brice gets them through to that next level, a lot of these churches will hire lay staff. You don't necessarily have to be part of the church, but a lot of the technicians, the video technicians, lighting technicians, audio technicians are actually,
Right.
a couple of guys on our staff actually work locally
Right.
in that capacity.
I'm so sorry, Charity. I totally didn't answer your question. So, is there a person to take over? Right. That whole side train. Wow. My bad. Okay. So, with all that explained, so now if you are a mega church, right, what I've seen is you already have the staff in place that knows how to mix on a Digico, console, right? They know good sound reinforcement. Typically, the reason why an integrator would even get involved is really just because of the dealership of the hardware. If you're already a large size church and they're like, oh, I want a Meyer line array or I want L acoustics, you can't just go to Sweetwater and get that yourself. You have to, you have to go to an integrator then. And that's really why integrators would even get involved with the large scale churches. Again, there's a really great market for that, and there's a lot of integrators that do that thing. And then back to the small and medium-sized churches, a lot of times, no, there is no one to take it over. And that's where really understanding the needs is so important, because there's going to be an inexperienced person there. And so there's a great untapped market for that, of just doing training sessions with, inexperienced front of house technicians for houses of worship, because they don't know, they don't have any formal education. So it's like, great, like I could do a tour of the United States for the next 10 years, actually probably for the rest of my life, just training up the people in the churches of, okay, here's the system that you have and here's how you properly run it. Most people wouldn't even know how to set an EQ. Actually, they wouldn't even know what a high-pass filter is really for and why it's beneficial, let alone touching a fully parametric EQ or trying to tune a compressor, right? They just know what the faders do and they know how the mutes work. That's typically the skill set that I see. So which is fine. I mean, these people are not engineers. They don't have the education like, that we do. So that's a job unto itself. I mean, forget about even dealing with the gear, just education, just going and teaching others. There's a whole market for that, which is what we call consulting. I mean,
Absolutely. Public school system needs that too. If anybody's ever been to their kids' recitals, or the last one I went to, they had a console all taped up. Don't touch this. Only so-and-so can touch this. And I just scratched my head going, oh my God.
well, I'm sure you remember Nathan Kanapke.
Yeah.
And I mean, he graduated and he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He's now a tech director for a high school. Like
That's what he wanted?
That is exactly what he wanted, and he landed it in no time. And he loves it. He loves every minute about it, because not just because he's teaching a theater, that was part of it, but he really wanted the education aspect. He wanted to connect with students and be able to use the performance space as a teaching classroom, the students. And it's like that's great. I mean, probably when I get to be 70 years old and I'm still bored, I'll probably be like, all right, I'll go find a high school.
Leon, how important is training? I know you guys have some pretty sophisticated stuff that even some of our students coming out of here still you have to prepare them still, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about that earlier in another class, if you will. The fact is, people that come from an educated background, as you folks, are a lot easier startup for us. And it's actually a prerequisite, to get a job with us, to have some formal education. Every company's going to hopefully take you from that point and then help you get acclimated to the culture of the company, the protocols, the way that this particular company would do things. So, yeah, I mean, it is pretty extensive. You want to work for a company because you like the company. We talk about the big bands and all the things that we do. That's great. That's just what we do. But you want to find a job with a company, if that's your goal, that you have a good two-way road with, that you like what the company does and you want to be part of that whole culture and team. Does that make sense? I mean, if I'm sitting in an interview and it's all about, yeah, but you guys do all the big tours, I go, well, that's what we do. But you want to like where you're going, and you want to be interested in the company in itself. Mm-hmm. So you want to study a company's history and drill backwards and learn where they came from, just like this school. When I was in class here in 1985, I see this whole thing from 32 years. And if you just come to school or come into our company in 2017, you don't have that historical knowledge of where it came from. And I think it's important to, get a read on where things started. 50 years of Clair Brothers is where it's at now. And
wow,
it's kind of good to know. All I'm saying is probably study the company you want to go work for. And yes, training is a big deal. We want people to get acclimated. It takes 6 months to a year before we even turn people loose. That's most of the time. It could be, can you leave tomorrow? But, we try to pace people and give them a chance to understand what we're doing.
I had a job offered to me before I even graduated Full Sail. And I was like, awesome, cool. And the pay wasn't terrible. And I seriously considered it. And then when I really started digging into researching the company and realized what types of jobs they did and what would be expected of me, and you will show up at 8:30 a.m. and you will clock out at 5 p.m. and you're not paid a minute more and you get 15 minutes for lunch, as some companies do. And it's like, I don't like that at all. Like, that's not for me. And it was interesting because in a different job interview, I was interviewing for this job, and during the interview, the interviewer said, an interview is an opportunity not only for us to decide whether you're a good fit for the company, it's an opportunity for you to decide whether the company is a good fit for you. And that was really important, and I keep that in mind anytime. It's a little bit different now that I own my own company. I don't have to go job seeking anymore, but now keep that in mind, that as you're going around, really see, is this a place that I want to be? Is this something that I want to be want to be doing. And that's what you said from the get-go is am I really happy doing this? Like, I don't need to fall out of the whole entertainment industry just because I don't like this one job, right? And there was a time, I left the first integration company I worked for because I wanted to try something else. I got bored and was just like, I just want to try something else. And I had a really good opportunity lined up, and it was going to be a total change of direction of my career path. I'm like, I just want to try it. And so I jumped into it and realized I didn't like it. I woke up every morning and realized how unhappy I was like, I don't like this, and realized I needed a change. And so I changed career paths again, back to something similar to what I was doing. So, and right now, like, I've only been out of school for 4 years. So I've changed my career twice, and and I've only been out for 4 years, and that's okay. Like,
and
you
that's
just
okay.
try it on for size. If you're absolutely pressed and you're just like, I can't stand this, then nothing's stopping you, nothing's holding you back. There's total world of opportunities out there. Whether you want to do touring or whether you don't want to do touring.
Well, that's the thing is, you guys are so much younger. Like, when I went to school here, I think I was like 24. So, I mean, while I was still young, it wasn't like the youth of coming straight out of high school, where you can just make those decisions and just kind of flip-flop around, and you just have all these different options. I think it's also, too, important to don't necessarily, I know that I've been offered jobs where you get that, oh my God, someone offered me a job, like, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm going to say yes. And I love, and even when I took this job that I just took, he kept asking me, are you sure you're ready for this? Are you sure you really want to do this? And I think you should ask yourself those questions, do your research, like you said, of the company that you're going to attach your name and reputation to it as well. But don't always feel so inclined to quickly say yes. Think about it. Because I know even when I got one of my first jobs, he was like, you don't have to give me an answer right now, which I was like, thank you. Because, I mean, when you're standing there sitting face to face with someone and they're telling you they want you to come there and you're thinking like, I'm not so sure, but you don't want to be disrespectful. And thankfully, he gave me 12 hours before he called me up and said he needed an answer. But, yeah, I mean, it's like, don't feel compelled to say yes to the first thing that comes along. Really think about it and see if it's a good fit for you. And maybe it is and maybe it's not, or maybe you want to try it out. But, yeah, you just definitely put some thought into it.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed, and I know you're on the Eagles tour and all of you have tasted touring, how important when you go to a venue, obviously your production manager advanced things, but when you go to a new venue that you've never played at before, how important are the local people that deal with the power, the catering?
Oh, that's huge.
Because I notice in the last 10 years, my band that I work with outside of Full Sail, 40% of our gigs are casinos. Mm-hmm. And these casinos are popping up everywhere across the country in remote areas. And these are excellent opportunities for people trained like ShowPro grads to go in as house staff.
Yeah. There's a lot of house jobs, and think about the House of Blues. I mean, places that regularly have, bands coming in and out. And another good friend of mine, Joe Battle, was our stage manager, and he was offered a gig being a Live Nation rep. So he's the guy when you come in that makes sure that the electrician is there and make sure that the box office person is there, and he transferred his whole skill set over that. But yeah, having a local person who can facilitate getting things done once you get in the building is huge. And it's great when it's the same person every time you come there. So that's like a whole other thing that's out there, is actually working for a specific building.
How many people out here think they would have a career that goes 30 years? How many folks here, raise your hand if you think you'll have that you could go work in a capacity in a company or independently in a position for 30 years. Do you think that far ahead? Does that sound enticing?
It's good.
The same place for 30 years?
Yeah.
Well, it's also good to go someplace where you can grow.
That's yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying you're going to start tomorrow and you're going to sit in the same chair for 30 years. I mean, a company or an organization that offers you growth. So I kind of said it wrong, maybe, but yeah.
A place you'd want to stay.
Would you be interested in anything like that? I'm just curious.
I know I just hit 25 here at Full Sail, so I would consider this place to be.
Well, that's what Gary was saying yesterday in one of the things that we did, is that they started this whole thing here on campus with the staff rather than hiring from outside, taking the people that are here and bringing them up and giving them new opportunities to grow into different parts of the company. And those are the places that you want to work. Like I probably wouldn't have gotten as far if I didn't, even though my work life was a little bit different, but I worked for people that wanted to see me grow, and they gave me opportunities. And more importantly, I let them know, I have an interest over here. Like, I really want to learn this stuff. Letting people know what your interests are, and then when those opportunities come up, they're like, oh, well, I remember you told me that, do you want to help me with this project or what have you? But sometimes it's just a matter of putting it out there and letting people know and putting yourself in an environment that there is growth potential.
I kind of want to veer off topic a little bit, because now that we're on this topic. So, really finding a place where you fit into the family, to the company family, is super important. So that way you can last 30 years there. I mean, because if you're not getting along with absolutely everyone, then, well, I'm not sure if that's a problem with you or the company, but let's start there. But finding a place where you fit in and belong, and especially finding a company that is going to invest in your growth potential, that is really important, and constantly being challenged in the right way. There comes a time where it's like, you've either gotten all the promotions possible, or you're working the highest, the highest position in the company, or whatever. You're practically running the company, because you're number 2 to the GM or whatever. And then it's like, well, what else is there for me? How do I go up from here? And that's kind of what I always ask myself, is like, well, how do I go up from here? And when you interview with a company, you should ask yourself, well, what is my growth potential here? And honestly, that is probably a really good question to ask at an interview, and say, what do you foresee my path to be here? What is my growth potential here? And as I found out really this last year, as I've been more of a team lead for my current projects, I've been challenged in new ways that I haven't before, and now I have to start thinking about, I have to start thinking about other people now, which is hard for me to do when I'm trying to deal with my own work. But now I'm starting to think about, personality type of things, character traits, and I find it really important to, first of all, understand yourself and know who you are and know what you're going after, because as looking back, it would have been a perfect opportunity during my job interviews when, I was searching for a job, that when they ask you to tell them about you, that's always part of an interview. They always say, so tell me about yourself. It's like, well, I like riding my bike, and I like, watching movies, and, eating. I'm a big fan of eating. And it's like, that's not really what they're looking for. What I should have been saying is like, I'm a perfectionist because I really like paying attention to details and getting it right. And I work super hard because I'm passionate about X, Y, and Z. And my weaknesses are this, and I know I'm trying to improve on this, and I recognize that this is a flaw in my character. And when you present all those things, it shows, one, that you're really self-aware, that you understand your own personality, that you understand the things that you are trying to work on. But it also gives some enlightenment to your employer, so that way they are now aware of how to best cultivate your talent and how to best fit you in to everyone else. A good manager, a good leader understands how to bring harmony to a team, and also how to maximize on each individual's potential. And the way that you do that, the way you create cohesion in a team and allow people to shine, is that they have to know what your positive traits are in your personality. So understanding who you are and being upfront about that will help them place you better, and you might even stand out among all of the other interviewees. You know, any given position could have, you know, dozens or hundreds of other candidates, and it will set you aside when you say, I'm fully aware of who I am, I'm fully aware of, you know, my flaws and things I'm working on, and I'm asking you as my employer, help me work on these things. You know, I want you to help me grow here. Again, so when you close out the interview, so what is my growth potential here? How can you help me? That'd be a great question.
Oh, that's huge. I mean, I've been in this business for a long time and hadn't done an interview in, I can't even tell you, 20 years, 25 years, until about 8 months ago when I got this job. And I was like, I have not, what do I wear? Like, I'm just used to getting a phone call and saying, go get on a plane. And I remember, and he was saying all of those type of things to me, and I was like, and then as I was sitting there, I was sort of like getting on my game, and he actually said, you know, I just see this as a stepping stone, and I definitely see you somewhere else in this company at some point. And then I was like, then I got all jazzed up, and I'm like, and he kept saying, are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I want to do this. But yeah, man, the whole growth potential, that's a really, really fantastic advice. It really is.
Cool. At this time, maybe we'll open it up for Q&A. If you're here, just raise your hand and they'll bring you a microphone, and then online somebody has you covered. So feel free to ask. Do we have anybody? Gentleman down front, because I can see him clearly. Oh, Vince, I'm sorry.
My first. Yay. Hi, guys. My name is Vince Cyrus, show pro. I wanted to ask Brice, you said you travel a lot?
Yeah.
And you said you might spend 300 days away from home. So I guess a double question. What is your home living situation like? I mean, do you have a house or an apartment? And then what's your living situation on site? Do you have another house, or do you just apartment?
Yeah. So
hotels?
I consider myself homeless. And then my mom quickly interjects whenever I say that. She's like, well, he's not homeless, he just lives everywhere. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's true too. So, so here's all the details. I actually put all my stuff into storage before I started both my China tour and my current situation in Dubai. So this is now the second time I've been homeless. I actually broke my apartment lease. I put everything into storage, and then I got on a plane. I only had one bag with me and went and lived in a foreign country for as long as I could. And that opportunity was amazing for me because the company puts us up. So all expenses are paid when you do an international integration project. So the company puts us up in a hotel. When we were in China, we were in more like apartment hotels. They weren't even one bedroom. They're like, you know, efficiencies. So it's more like a kitchenette type of thing. And there you have it. You know, all travel expenses are paid. In some cases, you get per diem. So, you know, you get an extra few bucks, you know, for meals and incidental expenses. So that's a great way to actually save money, and that I've been very fortunate to have that opportunity for so long. So that's my current situation right now. All my stuff, I think, is here in Orlando. I used a pod service, so I don't know where it is. Yeah, and I don't know when the next time it is I'll see it because I'm just out on the roads, you know. I'm pretty well parked down in a specific hotel. I do have an apartment right now in Dubai, again, that is covered under the project expenses. And it's kind of where I call my home right now because it's where the majority of my stuff is, you know, that I didn't bring with me this week. But you know, that's at the end of the night, I come back to the same place, and I'll be there until the project ends. And then coming home, the transition is really hard because now it's like you've got nothing. You've got one bag. So trying to find an apartment, you know, the day that you land is like, it's a frenzy. So the first time I came back from China, I also had to buy a car. So like I bought a car and rented an apartment like all in the same week, and that was a lot. So I'm not looking forward to the coming back part because now I got to settle down again and get all my stuff out of storage. But so that's a great perk to long-term international project.
Anybody else? Oh, gentleman right here.
Hi, my name is Lewis. I'm also show production. I was wondering, I didn't hear much about sports broadcasting because I'm really interested in that. I was wondering if that is touring or non-touring.
There's good broadcast work. A lot of those people live in New York, LA, and that's all they do is broadcast. There's people that work at TV shows. They work in studios that broadcast, and that's kind of a whole nother niche. And it's a little tough to get into, but it's possible. But you kind of have to be, you kind of got to be where that action is, and it's kind of in LA and New York right now, the way I see it.
Yeah. There are sports broadcasting companies like NEP. You can be an engineer on a truck, and depending on what level you are, the way that some of those companies are structured is the truck will drive from location to location, and you fly from home out to location, and you fly back home. So it's not touring per se. There's a lot of travel in it, and you're gone for a lot, but you're not sleeping on a bus is the main difference. So there are some of those things. And you brought up broadcasting too. We actually did an install for a broadcast facility. There's actually a marketing firm. So this particular marketing firm built their own studio. So it's a soundstage, there's a recording studio. They have a whole production edit suite, and it's really to produce commercials. So commercials and radio commercials. So it's kind of studio work, but not really. I think that they're more geared towards like show production type of people, not necessarily film and not necessarily recording arts, just because they want to use the same crew for everything. So there's some broadcast elements to it, there's some film production elements to it, and a lot of recording arts production elements to it. So, there are recording engineering students that are front of house engineers now. So that just because you're in show production doesn't mean you can't go to a studio or go do whatever else. It may not be what you're looking for, but those opportunities are there.
Also, to tag on, we have a significant number of grads working for NEP. And one of our grads, she just helped start the Australian division. So we have a few living over there. And it's kind of like, when we talked about the award shows and stuff, well, the broadcast trucks are there as well, and they're a similar type travel arrangement. But yeah, what month are you in?
8.
Okay, well, it's coming, soon come. Question in the back?
Yeah, we have we have an online question actually from Brandon Davis, a Show Pro alumni, and he asks particular about houses of worship, and he says, quite often they may ask you to buy the audio gear. So he said, where are the best places to look to get quotes for those kinds of things?
Well, typically when I'm dealing with with this type of thing, what I actually do is I go on Full Compass and Sweetwater, and I actually quote the MSRP price, not what they're selling it for, which is way more expensive. And I do that on purpose because I build what's called a ROM, a rough order of magnitude, that way. And so then when I turn over the bottom line, I say, this number is twice as high as what you can buy this for. And I did that on purpose because I want you to see what this is really going to cost you, because you're not thinking about installation cost or cabling or mounting hardware or anything like that, unless I do a really comprehensive design, but that's going to take a lot of time, a lot of my own personal time to do that. And so that's one way that I approach it, is I'll do MSRP. If you're not a dealer, then it's hard to get accurate pricing. So when you actually work for an integrator, then you have access to dealer pricing, and then that would be the proper way that we would quote gear. But there's nothing wrong with just going to Sweetwater. The bottom line of what you can buy online, it's not bad actually. Those prices online are really good.
If you contact a manufacturer too, sometimes they'll
I
hook you
think
up with
what he's
somebody.
saying, and a good point, is there's a lot of extras that come along. I need a mixing board, right? That's a broad statement. Mixing console. Okay, now there's all the interfacing, the cabling going to the stage, and it's a significant amount of money to cable things. Especially in an install when there's a lot of distance to run. Mm-hmm. Copper wire costs a lot of money. So you have to be careful in an install that you understand the total project to get the numbers right. So you got to be a little careful on that.
Right, and in some cases, the ancillary costs can equal the gear cost. So, you know,
Labor, you got labor cost?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The advice I've always been given is really more about estimating time, but sometimes when you're doing a ROM, we do it too. The best advice is spec what you think and then multiply by 2. And that's closer to the truth.
Just want to say hi to Brandon because I know he's in South Florida. I know that guy.
Hi, Brandon.
Good question, Brandon. Thanks.
Good question.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Over here.
I'm Kylie. Hi, Dave.
Kylie. Hi.
So my question, he had brought up before over here with sports broadcast and stuff, but what about other aspects of production in sports? As far as just the events, does that go more through like a company, like a production company, or is that more through stadiums, things like that?
Are you talking about like staff at the, say, the Citrus Bowl staff type thing?
Yeah, like things like that.
Kind of like what Mike does?
Not necessarily just like in the audio aspect, but within, the different like other aspects of video, or even just like the halftime shows, things like that.
I think I don't have a lot of experience in that, except like I know in Texas Stadium, they do have a staff of people that are in the background that have expertise in video and audio, whatever. So, I mean, you might go to venues that have large systems and where the sport events take place.
There's a Full Sail grad that was actually in my year that works at the TD Center in Boston, and he does all of the hockey broadcasting. He works in-house and does all the broadcast stuff that comes out is what he does in-house. And a lot of these buildings also have feeds that go throughout the building. So there's people in-house that are in charge of making sure that, down in dressing room A, they can watch the show, or up in the suites, because that's the other thing, especially when you're talking about arenas, people pay a lot of money for those suites. And so the games are also getting broadcast up in the suites, and there's got to be sound and all that kind of stuff as well. So a lot of that stuff is venue specific.
You should ask Mike. You in Mike's class yet? When you get to Mike's class, talk to him. He actually works for UCF and various places.
Tink Abraham works at the arena.
Tink. He works with Tink.
Okay.
Next question. Vince, again. Hey, have at it.
Getting to.
This is your time.
I know him, but from the past few years I've been here.
Actually, my question is for you, Dave. And
Oh,
maybe
no.
I was talking about this with Brice yesterday too. You've been here for 25 years, right? But you travel a lot. Can you maybe talk about the difference between traveling on a tour as opposed to how you guys
Weekend
travel?
warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of a weekend warrior now.
That's a
By the grace of my bosses, I can juggle my teaching schedule and go out on the weekend and do gigs, and that's very fortunate because those gigs are few and far between. But it's just like anything else. It's a lot of fly dates.
Overnights? I mean, do you stay in hotels and stuff? Or you sleep on the
Mostly
bus?
hotels. Yeah, a lot of the casinos we work in, we stay right on site. And when we do international, a lot of times, like Charity and I were discussing this morning, you come right off the plane and boom, you go to work. 9-hour flight, hello, time to load in, production meeting. So it's, it's not that glamorous because a lot of times the time constraints are ridiculous. And a lot of times, I don't know if this happened during your class, but a lot of times I'm coming off a plane straight and teaching lecture. I've done that a few times.
But the weekend warrior thing is a big thing in Nashville.
Yeah,
huge.
country.
Like country artists usually they will tour all year long, and they do a couple of shows a week. So you go to get dropped off at Kroger or whatever the grocery store is, or Walmart. You get dropped off, you get on the bus, you drive to the gig, and you're basically gone for 4 days, and then you come back and you're home for 2.5 days, and it's just a cycle, and they do it every single week. And I mean, you'll be at Walmart, and there'll be like 4 tour buses waiting for everybody to get on, and then they go off, and then they all come back, and they just keep doing it throughout the year. And that is a thing. That is, when you start getting outside of like the Tim McGraws and the Garth Brooks that are huge and do world tours, But a lot of these smaller bands, not even smaller, that's just how it works in Nashville. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Just there's a whole kind of, I don't want to say B list, but kind of older artists
Yeah.
who literally their touring life has kind of been resurrected through what I mentioned earlier, the casinos,
Yeah.
the smaller venues.
Or the residencies in Vegas, that's another thing.
yep.
Like a band will go sit in Vegas and, and do maybe 4 or 5 shows a week or less. And you're sitting there, like a friend of mine did Def Leppard. He was sitting in Vegas for a month, and I think they did 3 shows a week.
Yeah, and they all hire staff. A lot of them like
Yeah.
to carry their own monitor, engineer / tour manager / production.
Yeah, that crews are usually.
Well, IATSE is excellent because anywhere you live, you can go to the local and you can apply and go talk to them. And you don't necessarily have to join right away, but you work off the referral hall. And after you get so much time in, you can decide whether you want them to vote you in. And when you get in, they have all kinds of health insurance plans and all kinds of cool stuff. And like Orlando, Vegas are probably the 2 hotbeds for IATSE work because of all the conventions. And Infocom's coming here pretty soon. And I think it's Local 631 here. But it's an excellent, supplement to a freelancer's life. Now, some cities like New York, you're going to have a little tougher time getting in. But a lot of that stuff on Broadway, all that, Local 1. But you'll learn a lot. You network with a lot of different people. And like I said, I did it early on before I started working here. I think I came off the road with George Clinton and was trying to find myself for a summer, and IATSE helped pay the bills. I know some of you, did you work at House of Blues at all while you were here? Yeah, House of Blues actually has a good system set up with our Show Pro club for you Show Pro students in the beginning. And how many of you have worked House of Blues calls? Yeah. So that's a good way to get in and kind of meet people. Anybody else? That's it? Really? Come on, Vince. Come on, Kylie. That's it. I know Vince has another question.
No, she had another question. Ask.
Sorry, Kylie.
It's okay. Okay, so I was going to ask with, you talked about house of worship and stuff a lot and like different things like that. Is it common to see like more than one I should say, a person that works with more than one house of worship? I know like church is Sunday and Thursday and whatnot, but like,
That'd be tough.
do you see that ever, or is it kind of just like a one person, they work with this church only?
The people I know kind of get immersed in one church, and then that's what they're doing.
Well,
You know.
make no mistake, just because it's Sunday, that doesn't mean that the other 6 days of the week are unused.
That's right.
Because actually, so I interviewed at a church, and there were 11 performance spaces on campus, and what they wanted out of me, which they were just hiring one TD, what they wanted, it was going to be easily 65 hours a week. And again, back to budgetary considerations, it fell through because what they expected to pay and what they expected performance-wise were 2 opposite ends of the spectrum there, unfortunately. So, there's several churches here in Orlando that their paid staff, their paid audio staff, they're busy all week. I mean, they do, and they don't just do audio. I had a friend that did a lot of video as well. So they will do stage prep, before the weekend services, and then they record, do audio and video recording, and then now they got to turn out the podcast, before Monday, both the video version and the audio version, and then now it's production meetings, on Tuesday, and then now it's rehearsal on Wednesday, and so on and so forth. So, it's not a weekend gig at all. It is a full-time job. So, make no mistake. Now, I don't think I've ever heard of anyone having more than one church. There, again, at mega status, you have more than one campus, and then that's even more crazy. So, not to say that's not possible, but Sundays would be really conflicting. That would be the only thing.
They have busy season too, like
Yeah.
the holidays.
Yeah. Holidays are busy.
They'll take on more staff, and you get a chance to work with different churches and kind of test the waters.
And not for nothing, but here in Orlando is that's a great opportunity to learn and to volunteer at the big churches here, and they're really good. They have a lot of good gear, so you're getting your hands on a lot of good stuff, and they do a lot of special events. I mean, a lot of special events come through the churches here in Orlando, so definitely worth something checking out.
Good question. Anybody else? Oh, now we got some popping. One more? Is that Nacho?
Yeah, that's me. So I'm Nacho. I'm also show pro, and I would like to ask Brice. You mentioned you do a lot of theme park applications, but I don't really know if it's audio, video, special effects. So do you do all of them? And what's the research that you do? Like you go and visit other theme parks, or you base on your own creative ideas? Like more.
Right.
What do you do to create?
Sure. So a lot of my work actually involves working with other creatives. So typically for whether it's an attraction, just one ride, or whether it's a whole theme park, there is either one or a team of creative people. And so they who are not necessarily the content creators. So there is the overall company, there's the owner that's going to own and operate the park, and then there's the IP holder that's probably generating the content, and then they hire a creative person to come in and say, this is the way I want the ride to function, or this is the way I want the theme park to feel. And then they say, I want it louder, or I want the lights a different color, I want this, that, and the other. They give all the creative input, and I work with them to make that a reality. So they come to me and say, hey, I want this music played here, here, and here, and I want it played this loud. Okay, great. I go to the actual systems and program that to happen, and that's what I primarily do for all the installations. And I'm sorry, what was your first question again?
Yeah, like audio, video.
Oh, yeah. So my scope of work as well. So the disciplines that I do is primarily audio. However, I came to Full Sail for lighting, so if I had to dabble in that, I could. Typically, lighting is its own separate vendor because that's considered high voltage. That deals with line level, as in 120 or 208, or in my parts of the world 240 volts, and because it's high voltage, that's always considered something different. AVC, as the industry calls it, audio, video, and control, that is considered low voltage. So that's why they're typically scoped differently. So I am an AVC integrator is my company. We do audio design primarily by trade. However, we also do video, and my specialty is all show control programming. So I know that you are just dying to hear me just start preaching on show control programming, but in the interest of time, I can't. Yeah. So. Unfortunately. So that's a whole another session for another time. But that's primarily the scopes that we do.
Thank you, Nacho. Okay, thank you all for coming today. We appreciate it. Also, thanks for watching online. And I especially want to thank our guests who give their time. And like Leon's been coming here for years. I really appreciate you. And Charity, thank you for coming. And of course, Brice, future Hall of Famer. That's all we have for you today. Take care.
All right, thanks.